Hello, and welcome to another Autodesk Media Entertainment live webinar series. My name is Craig Barr, and today I'm going to take you through modeling workflows in Autodesk Maya 2015 and Autodesk Maya 2015 Extension 1 release. So just a quick agenda as to what this webinar is going to cover. We're going to take a look at what the Maya 2015 Extension 1 release is and how one can get their hands on this. So that is via subscription. We'll take a quick look at what subscription is all about, and then we'll jump into polygonal modeling workflows, which is the bulk of what this webinar is about. What I'm going to be focusing on specifically is the Modeling Toolkit integration within Maya. For those that are not fully familiar with the history there, this was the Next toolkit that was available as a plugin previously, and we've integrated this into Maya, and we've begun to adapt and change and add to the tool set as releases are going forward. And we're going to take a look at overall working within Maya with the Modeling Toolkit, but also we'll jump in and I'll highlight some of the new features from Maya 2015 Extension 1 as we go as well. And the way we're going to look at that is simply like kind of a space gun, an ecto gun I'm calling it, that is simply created from a cube. And we just start out with a cube and use the Modeling Toolkit and just quickly begin to extrude and bevel and use all the fancy connection tools and all the different tools in there that allow us to move through that process rather quickly and quite nicely within Maya. We'll also look at the Boolean improvements. The Maya Boolean system now is very robust, very powerful, very fast, and we'll look at a couple of different ways that we can work with that. There are some interesting features within the Boolean toolset that can aid to your workflow. We'll look at an interesting way that you can translate or move or manipulate textures between models as well with the Boolean improvements. And then we want to look at the Quad Draw tool. Now that is part of the Modeling Toolkit, but I feel it's important to take a look at the Modeling Toolkit Quad Draw tool within the two major areas of how that tool can work. So I'm going to kind of divide that up into a couple of different ways. One of them is adding geometry to an existing model, and then how you can work with that by kind of drawing, or as I refer to it, dot drawing onto an existing piece of geometry and then building a whole new piece of geometry or a new piece of model. And the other one is this Manual Retopology workflow. We'll take a look at some pros of, some advantages to how working with the dot drawing method is very powerful, gives you lots of control. And then we'll look at the polystrip method of really quickly drawing or painting down strips of polygons and then simply stretching or extending your edges right across the surface. That is a really powerful way to essentially shrink wrap geometry as you go to retopologize a surface. The last thing we want to take a look at here is in Viewport 2.0. I'm going to really take a really quick look at model visualization and working specifically within some of the color management tools that are available in the Extension 1 release of Maya 2015. So Autodesk subscription, what is this all about? Well, there are three flavors of subscription to help you out. Just really quickly, subscription is what allows customers to get access to things like our extension releases. So all of our products within Autodesk, anytime we have an extension release, these are available solely through subscription. Extension releases are often features or tool sets that may be coming out in future full product releases. At the very least, as a subscription customer, you get a real early heads up diving into those tools, and you get to see how we're working with them and developing them really early as well. Of course, the three flavors of subscription: maintenance, desktop, and cloud service subscription. And what these will allow you are things like giving you your premium technical support, as well as flexibility in the way that you might want to pay. We have things monthly, quarterly, or annual ways of paying for your subscription, and then cloud service subscription as well. So taking advantage of the cloud for virtually infinite computing power. So if you're familiar with things like some of our 123D apps, You can see a little bit of the cloud integration there. And one of the really big, powerful areas we have is with our recap or reality capture software, and being able to go in and utilize the cloud and this infinite computing power in the cloud and develop or deliver to you a fully textured 3D mesh based off of photographs that you provide into the cloud. So there's a basic overview of subscription and the three flavors, 3 ways to subscribe. So let's take a really quick look at what's new in Maya 2015 Extension 1. Now, I'm not covering everything here. There are over 37 enhancements available to Maya 2015 in the Extension 1 release. But specifically here, I'm highlighting some of the highlights or some of the key points that have to do with modeling. So within our open subdivision surfaces, we've added adaptive, and that actually will work in the default viewport as well. Support for UV tiles for open subdiv surfaces, which is nice. Within the modeling world here, improved pivot editing workflow. So this is really nice. This is where you can actually go and customize your pivots to just about anything else. So an object, and grab a component from another object for that matter, and use that to drive your pivot. And you can do this on the fly as you model and you work on any object now within Maya. We're going to take a look at this cloud import export way of working with things, which allows you to work with, as I mentioned, the Autodesk Cloud, Autodesk 360. I had mentioned some of the 123D apps, things like Sculpt or Creature, things like Catch123D, our recap app, and as well Dropbox is now fully integrated into Maya, so you can import and export right within your Dropbox account, so you can collaborate with people rather easily and have access to your files anywhere you go. That was one thing that we heard a lot of requests. People wanted this cloud interoperability, and Dropbox is one of the ones that we've started out here with that we've had a lot of good feedback on. And I'll quickly show this one-click game data exchange. We've added a lot of things here. So when I jump in, I will just quickly do a little bit of a tour there to show how that is, and then before we get into the modeling. As well, with our Alembic caching, we have the ability to write creases, which is nice to be able to store creases on your cached asset as well. So Modeling Toolkit updates. We're going to really spend a lot of time in the Modeling Toolkit here, looking at the multi-cut tool enhancements, Target Weld tool, which is the combination of several tools for merging components. We've combined that into one tool. Things like in the Modeling Toolkit, the ability to reactivate the last used tool. So while you're working, you can just quickly reactivate and switch back and forth between tools. As well, we've added the ability to constrain your selections or utilize selection constraints based off of different surface features on a model. What's new in Maya 2015 Extension 1? Rendering. I'm not going to cover all of these, but I'm highlighting a couple of things that we're going to touch base on a little bit at the end. Color management within Viewport 2.0, exposure, gamma, and transform view. So some nice ways to get into model visualization within Viewport 2.0 in Maya. Also highlighted here that I've highlighted, if you're working within your kind of real-time rendering or viewport rendering, Maya Hardware 2.0 can now save out OpenEXR files, which is nice. Nice file format for another option for real-time rendering or Maya hardware rendering. So the content approach to this webinar, as I mentioned, we're going to build a gun essentially from really basic shapes. We start with a cube and do a modeling toolkit tour of some of the features available. The quad draw tool, we're going to focus a little bit on that. What I refer to as the two main ways of working, this dot drawing approach and manual retopology. And we'll look at manual retopology with the quad draw tool with this pipeline workflow or data exchange. And this is where we can bring in reality capture data through the new cloud integration that's available within Maya 2015 Extension 1. And we can take advantage of things like Alembic caching, GPU caching, where I can take really large, dense data sets and offload that to my GPU so that I'm able to work with it really quickly within my Maya environment. Retopology options. Really quickly, we're not getting into all of these options here, specifically the Mudbox ones. I'm mentioning that on here just to give an idea of the different options that are available today within your toolkit. The automatic or guided retopology that's available within Mudbox provides a really quick way to take really dense meshes that you may have created just from pushing and pulling, and create a whole new model there from within Mudbox. Guided retopology using curves to guide edge flow on a model. What we're going to focus on specifically though today is the manual retopology, specifically the Maya Quad Draw tool. And as I mentioned, we're going to look at this data exchange using GPU caching as we go. So let's jump into how we can work with this within Maya. So we have this gun model here that I've whipped up starting with a simple cube, and then using the Modeling Toolkit just to point out where the Modeling Toolkit is here. So on the top corner, probably the quickest way for you to grab these 4 icons. The Modeling Toolkit, if you hover over any of them, of course, they're going to give you the little help bubble. But if I click the Modeling Toolkit, it's going to dock that in a tab at the side of my UI here, so that I have access to it as I work. And here are the basics of the Modeling Toolkit. You can see we keep it nice and light. We have just our main mesh editing tools that I'm going to work with here available. And if I click on any of these tools, we actually get some options down below. So let's take a look at how we can model up this simple little ecto gun with these little plasma cylinders on here, and how we can work with the Modeling Toolkit to get there. So I'm just going to turn that off, and then we'll get to our base little cube to start with. And I'll turn on my grid. So with this, you'll see that there's nothing special going on this cube. I don't have any subdivisions going on. And the reason why I don't want any subdivisions is I'm going to use the multi-cut tool available within the Modeling Toolkit. So quickly, the multi-cut tool. I mentioned now, if you drag down below, you can see all of your different options available. The multi-cut tool has some enhancements available here. The menu options are much greater now down below. We can actually access a bunch of different things in here. So let's take a look at how multi-cut tool works really quickly before I start to dive in and actually use a lot of these tools together. So just on this simple block, I think it'd be the easy way to show this. The multi-cut tool allows you to do a bunch of different things. It's kind of a jackknife tool. It allows me to previs anywhere that I want to draw cuts along here. So before I commit to anything, you'll see this across the board within the Modeling Toolkit, this ability to preview before you commit. So the idea is that as you're working, you're actually drawing away. So for example here, I might go in and start to draw some of these dots in here, but I haven't actually committed to that. I'm actually not cutting the mesh. I'm previewing what the result will be. And then the nice thing about this with these previews is that I can change that before I've even committed to it. So I can go in and actually change the placement of how I want these dots to cut as I go. And if I just simply hit enter, it's going to commit to that and give me that cut in there. Now another thing here, if I hold down the shift key, it's going to lock to the mid area of my edge on here, and you'll see that the snap I'm getting here is at 25% increments, and that's by default. You can see that we have snap set to 25, and you can of course set that to whatever you might want it to be. Another thing that you'll notice here is as I draw, if I bring down a bunch of different dots in here, and if I don't like having all those dots, I can simply just hit undo before I've even committed to it. So that's kind of nice, so that I don't have to commit, undo, and then redo my entire cut. I can get into here and actually simply undo as I go. One of the things you'll notice here within the extension release, I'm holding down Control and Shift, and I'm getting this nice little perpendicular green highlight. What that's giving me is 90-degree cuts. So I can now go in and get exactly 90-degree cuts to the cut that I'm working with. So I can get some nice accurate precision as I'm modeling in there as well if I want to use this draw cut technique. So let's get out of there and take a look at different ways that we can work with the multi-cut tool. So we've seen this draw and cut area there that I can do across multiple faces as well. And that works as you saw that I'm using edges, I'm using verts, and I'm using faces. So that's the nice thing about the multi-cut tool. I'm working with all of the components at the same time. I'm cutting edges, I'm using verts to snap to, I'm cutting faces, and I'm drawing across faces as well, which is a really nice quick way to cut or to add to my geometry. Let's take a look at this slice tool. The slice tool does a couple of interesting things. So three basic ways that I can work with the slice tool. If I want to add in geometry, I can simply just drag through, and this is much like the knife tool that we previously would work with in Maya. And this will give you those simple little cuts or slices, adding edge loops across things. But as well, if I go into the slice tool and I hit delete faces, this is really nice. This is just going to give me, it's going to blow away faces here. And you can see that I get a little perpendicular line telling me that that's the outside area. Those are the areas I'm going to cut or delete away. So if I let go of that, I'm just simply cutting right across the geometry. And you can see that I can really quickly get some nice cutting effects in here to cut that. Let's bring that back. Furthermore, if I want to do something different here, I want to remove or separate faces, but I don't want to delete them, I can use extract faces. By default, it's going to set it to 0.5 across X, Y, and Z, or Z for that matter. But if I bring this across, same thing, the little perpendicular an indicator for me to show me this side that's going to cut, and it's going to push that section out there. So I can get almost this kind of exploded view essentially with my geometry as I go. Now I can as well, let's turn that one off. I can set my slice along specific planes. So for example, in the YZ plane, if I wanted to commit to a specific cut, I can start to draw that in and begin to work with how I want that specifically locked to that specific plane, or any of these planes for that matter. So I can just hit enter to commit to that. I'm going to get out of that tool though, so that I'm not committing to it. We'll just get right out of there. And back to our multi-cut tool. The other area that we've combined all of these different tools, we've seen slice, we've seen deleting faces, extracting faces, that kind of exploding view. Of course, drawing cuts across things. But if I simply hold down Control, this is going to give me my insert edge loops. So I can just go in and really rapidly insert edge loops in here as I go. And what I want to do with this specifically, I'm going to start to draw in some areas that I want to work with. I should point out I'm just holding down Control to get my insert edge loops. If I hold down Control Shift, it will snap to those increments. So I'm getting at 25% increments here as I go. I'm going to insert an edge loop maybe in this area here, because I want to build a bit of a handle on top of my pistol or my space gun that I'm building here. That's fine. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a couple of these in here just by simply inserting some of these edge loops, and I'm going to snap. We'll do one at 50, one down the middle here, and one down that area there as well. That should be fine. And then what I want to do is just simply grab some extrusions. So I'm just going to exit out of that tool, and you can see that by default I'm using multi-component. So I'm getting multi-component select. Let's select actually some faces in here. And just by selecting those faces, I'm going to hit extrude. I'm going to reset my tool. Something to point out, anytime I'm using the extrusion tool, or any of these tools for that matter, it's going to remember your last settings, and that's really useful, especially if you're doing a lot of repetitive cuts or extrusions so that you're getting the same uniform look going across your model. It's going to remember those things there. If I don't want that, I just simply hit the reset button. You'll see this across all the different tools. So in this case, I'm going to just use my extrusion here and pull this out. I can dial in the divisions I may want to have in there as well. In this case, I'm just going to leave it free because I can always come back with my multi-cut tool and add to that if I want to. That's fine. So now what I want to do actually with my faces here, I want to bring those in a little bit, taper them in a little bit here, and just kind of bring them in. You know what, and the other thing too, I think they're maybe a little bit too high, so not a problem, I'll bring them down. And then what I want to do is join or connect these two, because I want to have kind of a bit of a handle going between these kind of uprights in here. I'm going to take the multi-cut tool and just simply cut, you know, maybe we'll add, let's simply cut that across. That should be good right there. And then what I'll do with these faces, I'm going to grab some of these faces in here. Now the problem is that if I go into my bridge tool, you can see that I'm getting a nice bridge across there. Shouldn't say a problem. There are actually a couple really cool things that we can do with bridge. I'm going to show it in two different ways here actually. Let's use that one, and that's simply a linear bridge. I want to show a different option that we can work with. Now I can dial in divisions. I can dial in a taper if I had a way to taper that, how that bridge may go in here. We'll look at a way that we can use twist and taper in a different technique here in a moment. Let's actually leave that. And then with my divisions, I might want to dial those in a bit. Let's leave them at 2. So there we have a nice linear division or a linear bridge happening here. And in a moment, I'm going to keep modeling away. I'm going to build a bit of a handle on this guy. Go up to our multi-component. And if I get the handle going on here, just a simple, really simple handle, we'll extrude. Let's reset that one. Bring it out into here. And then with my offset, maybe bring it actually out of it this way. And just kind of translate this guy. I think that should be big enough for a handle for this. That should be fine. And then what I'm going to want to do is just a couple more extrusions on here. You can see I'm just getting in the real simple base form on this. Nothing fancy at all. It's always good to just kind of block out what you're building or what you're working with and then begin to formalize or kind of refine it as you go. Let's add in a couple of different things here. One of the things I want to do is just with the multi-cut tool, let's grab a couple of different areas to work with. Now I've inserted a couple of edges in here. It's important to note that if I ever want to change these, I'm just going to hit the shift key. I'm just double clicking on my edge loops, and I'm going to hit the shift key and go to the slide edge tool and just simply drag these edges around a bit. And actually, you know what I want to do? I'm going to keep this guy. I'm going to bring him over there. I'm going to keep them together, but I could easily start to spread those out uniformly across the surface. But I want to keep them out there, maybe not that far. Bring them in. Actually, let's leave this guy here, and maybe this guy will bring in a little bit. And the reason why I want to do that is I'm going to create a bit of a trigger area here. I'm not sure what you call that. The trigger guard. Yeah, okay, sure. And then what we'll do is we'll get into the multi-cut tool. Going to insert in a bit of some faces on there. Now I want to keep these guys in a little bit. So this is where I'm going to grab a couple of faces. Go to my extrude tool. I want to reset that and not keep faces together. So this way, what I'm going to do is bring in the offset and work with this in a bit of a different way. So I'm just using extrusion to essentially, I could do something like this with bevel as well if I wanted to. But I'm going to grab these faces here and I'm going to work with them in this way here. So let's take a look at one of these in here. Now we talked about the bridge tool doing a simple bridge, a simple linear bridge that we saw across this handle up above. Let's take a look at another way that we can work with that. So if I hit the bridge tool, by default it's going to join that. Let's reset it because I had divisions set. Maybe I don't want to set those quite yet. But in any of these tools, whoops, as I'm working, if I hit Control Shift with and right click with this, you'll see that I actually get the marking menu of those settings there. And here we have curve types. Well, if I put that to blend and then bring in the divisions, blend is actually going to give me, let's show the difference here. Blend is actually going to give me, here's linear, it's just going to give me this linear straight across, but blend is actually going to give me a curve essentially that it's going across. And the more divisions I add, the more, obviously the more smooth of that curve I'm going to take advantage of. So we can leave it something like this, just to get that simple shape. And then of course the nice thing is if I go back into, let's get into multi-component again. We'll grab this guy, we'll bridge in there. That bridge I wanted to make as well a blend, and there we go. The settings are remembered down here, the divisions and how I've set that so that we have this kind of doubled up little handle. Something like I did on the final one, I have this kind of split little trigger area in there. Okay, that's fine. So we've seen different ways that we can use the multi-cut tool, different ways that we can use a linear, or the bridge tool. We can do a linear, we can do a blend and get that kind of curved effect going. Let's move forward here now and actually begin to build out this overall area. Actually, what I want to do is grab these edges. We'll grab that entire edge, and let's take a look at the bevel tool. We finally have a really nice non-destructive bevel here in the Modeling Toolkit, and the nice thing about this is that it's fast, it's quick, it preserves your corners well for you as you model. I'm just going to bring this guy down to around there. I can actually override this. Maybe we double it up. That's too much. Something like that is fine. And then what I want to do, we'll get out of that tool, and I'm going to grab the multi-component. I want to work with specifically these faces, because now I'm going to start to build up the barrel area of the gun. So that's where we'll go to extrude. I'll do my reset on my extrude. Default to the local area. I'm going to bring this one out. I want this one here to be probably around that big. That should be fine. And then what I want to start to do with this guy here is work with the base here. Let's grab multi-cut again. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I am going to extrude these guys right out from here. So if I hit extrude again, I don't want it going out that far. We'll bring it down, just going to line it up with that top kind of knuckle area of the trigger. And then what I've done on the actual gun, I built this area where it kind of has a little bit of a slider up in here so that I can slide that kind of component down. And then I've done all these other extrusions inside. I'm not going to keep repeating each one over and over. We'll jump ahead here in a moment, but the idea being that now I'm starting to get into kind of refining the overall shape. Here's a tool that's actually been in Maya for a while that's kind of nice. If I wanted to, let's grab these guys here. If I just grab, just a tip there, if I grab one component, say for example a face, and then grab the end and double click it, it's going to grab that whole loop or ring for me as well, right? So if I go into here and I do the one right side by side, it's going to grab that whole edge loop for me. Same with this here, if I go in and double click the one side by side. But I can also do things like grab here to, if we wanted to go here to here, for example, and if I wanted to extrude that guy out, I can simply do that like that as well. Now, what I wanted to show with this, if I just quickly grab that, whoops, I want to quickly grab this guy and, whoops, let's grab this guy. I want to use something that's been in Maya for a while that's actually a really kind of interesting and effective tool. I'm going to grab these edges on the top here, and then if we look underneath our mesh menu set, actually before I get to what I want to show, I should point out we have reorganized a lot of the menu sets in here. So you can see mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools. And what's happened here under mesh, for example, we have everything broken down to different areas: combine, separate, shape, mirror, transfer, optimize. Underneath edit mesh, you'll see that we've broken it down by component. So you see that we have vertex, edge, face, curves, mesh tools, we put all our kind of editing tools in here. So here's our modeling toolkit. You can also access to turn on or hide the modeling toolkit in here. And here's all of our editing tools. Underneath mesh tool here, we'll get to our Booleans, which is under the combine area here shortly. For now though, what I wanted to show is underneath edit mesh under face, using the wedge tool. So if I just hit wedge, it's going to dial in this kind of nice effect for me here so that I can set the overall degree that I want to work on, that wedge angle, and how many divisions I want to have. So you're getting this nice way of sweeping a nice effect across there. And that's just because I grabbed several faces and then defined the edges that I want to sweep that overall effect around in there. So I can change those divisions if I didn't want, if I wanted to smoothen that out, or if I didn't want so many. In this case, I actually don't want so many. I want to keep it a little bit low for now. And I will keep this one here to around 90. That's fine. And then let's move ahead with how we want to work with this simple little weapon in here. One of the things that I want to do in here is start to get into this area in here. I'm going to jump into the modeling toolkit and just divide this guy out really quickly here. So maybe add in a couple of different spans that we can work with. And the reason why I want to do this is that I want to show a different way that we can add in some different details using a rather interesting tool called the Connect tool within the Modeling Toolkit. Let's straighten out some of these guys here. So how many spans do we have across? That should be fine. But I want to start to slide, I want to start to slide or control kind of how these guys are balanced out. So I'm going to use my slide tool. And I'm just using the middle mouse button just to kind of slide or balance out the overall edge or a face width on some of these guys in here. That's good enough for what I want to do on here. What I want to show is the Connect tool just to build this kind of interesting little inset design on here. So if I go into my multi-components, or if I hit faces specifically, what I'm going to work with here are using faces. So maybe I'll just click faces on there. And you'll see that we have these different ways of selecting faces. Well, if I hit tab, it switches to drag, and this is actually a really nice way to work. First thing I'm going to do is turn on my symmetry, and you'll see that I'm getting these blue highlights as I go. So I can work with symmetry with any of my tools as I model, but some of the nice things that I can do in here, if I want to hold down drag, and I'm turn off caps lock, I'm holding down drag, and you'll see that it's selecting it over here. I'm effectively paint selecting as I go. So let's do something like this. And if I hit the Connect tool, let's reset that in there. You'll see that again, remember I mentioned that you're getting all this pre-selection highlighting. So before I even commit to it, it's showing me what result I'm going to get. In this case here, I want to build this little inset, this detail within my model that actually highlights or showcases a little bit of this connection tool. So I'm going to use two segments, and I can slide those segments around, so I can slide them as to how I want them to be on those faces. And then pinch is going to show me how I want them dialed in. So let's keep it maybe pinched in, something like that. And then if we hit enter, we've committed to that, which is nice. And then again, if I just grab two of these faces, I'm grabbing that whole area on there, and I hit extrude. Let's reset our settings on there and bring that guy in a little bit. So we've had a really quick and easy way to get a nice little inset feature in here with the Connect tool. What a nice way to simply slice or cut faces by selecting the components. It's a really quick and easy way to do that. All right, let's move forward onto here. Now we've taken a look at the bevel tool. Now this is of course where I could go in and start to really bevel up. You know, a lot of these areas are where we would really want to start to put in things like, you know, beveling. We can maybe reset that. Maybe we don't want as big of a bevel on there. And that's where we can start to really kind of dial in these overall bevels. But let's move forward and take a look at some other ways that we can work with this. So we've looked at how we can use symmetry. We've looked at the connect tool. Let's start to kind of bring in maybe something else in here. We can bring in this little guy. And this is an area on here that I actually, on the final gun, I have all of these different kind of effects on here using, I'm just bringing the cylinder here because I want to get into some Booleans. And the way I want to work with these Booleans here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply use Control D and duplicate a cylinder and start to place this across the geometry. And once I've placed it, just as a tip here, if you're not familiar with this, Control D to duplicate, slide it where you want it to be, or rotate it, transform it to wherever you want it to be, and then hit Shift D again. It's going to repeat that last command. So just a simple little trick for you there. And then I'll hit Control D on these. And let's bring it into something like this. Let's grab this and kind of offset these guys. I'm going to duplicate this one over here maybe a little bit. Maybe grab these three, offset them a little bit more. And I just want to rapidly Control D, bring these guys down. Something like that. That's fine. For illustration purposes anyways, the point is that with the Boolean system within Maya now, we have this really powerful way of using multiple objects at once and then translating and transforming them, of course, after you've committed. So I'm going to select this simple object here first, and then I'm going to grab all of my cylinders, and I'm just going to quickly do that by coming up above here and Control Shift select all of them. Now this is found underneath the Mesh Booleans menu set. I'm going to go into difference. You can see here that we have edge and normal. Now these little illustrations are going to give you exactly what's going to happen. Edge is going to give me what I want specifically here to cut through. Normal is going to give me what we couldn't do previously before with the old Boolean, and that is a nice clean trim effect on your polygonal surface. So let's hit apply, and now you'll see that we have this nice simple Boolean in here. And just a little tip, holding or storing your settings here in the I only have one set in here, so if I select that object, actually it brought all of them over. They were all stored in there, so that's nice. I can actually go in here and change them around, so I can do things like scale that up, for example. I could even rotate these guys around a bit if I wanted. I'm actually rotating only the one there right now. Select all those objects there, and then I can change them or augment them. And if I bring them to the edge, you see we got a really clean Boolean in there. So you can see that we finally have something that's going to work really nice and clean as you're modeling within Maya. So let's move forward with that. One of the things I wanted to point out while we're on Booleans, I use a lot of Booleans on the final gun on here. While we're on Booleans, let's take a look at one way we can work on Booleans really quickly. If I jump into this guy, you'll see that I have this ship, and I have these pre-made little missiles in here. Now if I wanted to use those to Boolean this into place, I can simply do that. Let's grab the nose, and then grab all of the missiles here for Booleans, and let's go into our Booleans. I'm going to do a difference again. We talked about the difference here between edge and normal. Let's take a look at normal. Normal is going to give me that nice clean trim effect on the geometry, which is excellent, very handy, nice and quick and clean. Of course, I can go and change those. I can move those around and see how the trims are going to work with them. But here's something interesting. Let's use the edge and let's use a Boolean of the geometry. Now, if I hit apply on that, you'll see that it's actually effectively transferred or brought that texture over from that object into this object. So I now have that missile texture transformed in there. Now if I grab all those missiles again, this is where I could start to begin to change, transform, scale, rotate, whatever it may be. I just wanted to show that this is a different way you can work with Booleans. You can get that trim effect, but you can also transfer textures effectively over as well. So let's move back to our gun model and jump ahead here. I'm going to reveal, let's get rid of this guy. This is our guy we quickly built up. So here we have a gun that's it's almost there. I'm going to turn off the construction plane. And if we want to work with adding or adding different pieces of geometry, but in context to the geometry, a really quick and easy way to do that is getting into our quad draw tool. Now the way this works is really nice, really simple. I want to work with this piece of geometry. I'm going to make that piece of geometry a live surface. So I've made that piece of geometry a live surface right now. If I hit wireframe, you'll see that it's bright green. Let's go back to our shaded mode and hit quad draw. The quad draw tool now knows to work with that live surface. That gun is effectively live, and that's how we're going to work with this. And it's going to stick my dots or the polygons that I generate to this surface. Now with quad draw, this is exactly the way it works. I can go in and start to drop down simple little dots. Now, just a little tip with this. If you're going to work with quad draw, it's a really nice and simple way to drop down geometry. I'm just drawing these dots on, but you'll notice I can easily start to go crazy in here if I wanted to, but why do that when you can simply just frame it in? It's a nice way to just put the basics down, right? And then later go in and add in the resolution you want. There's many ways to do that with the quad draw tool, and we'll take a look at that here in a moment. But all I'm doing is framing in this overall way of working with this. Now I've drawn in the dots. Well, what does that give me? If I hold down Shift over these dots, I'm going to get a pre-selection highlighting or a pre-highlighting as to the polygon that I'm generating here. So if I click that, I've now generated simple geometry in context to my model underneath. That's a really nice way to work. And now I can start to go and let's make this a little bit different here. I want this to follow this, but I don't want it to go all of the way across. So let's we'll drop in or just click in, shift click in our polys. And there we go. But I want something different here. I want to grab this edge that I'm going to work with here. And if I'll hold down my tab key, I'm going to right click and just go to extend edge. So the nice thing about that is that I can grab this edge and pull it out. And I can grab this edge and pull it out as well. But I should note here that, or you'll see I can pull this out this way and it'll stick up here. But if I pull it to this other one, it's going to auto weld for me. And that's really nice. That's actually gone ahead and auto welded that in there. This would probably be a good time to show if I wanted to draw, let's draw something really quick like this and go back into our modeling toolkit. We have a target weld tool. Target weld works in a way that I can actually go between components. So you can see I can do it between edges. I can do it between vertices here as well. And I can merge to the target or to the center. So in this case here with these edges, it's going to highlight where that center is going to meet, and I can quickly do that. Same with the verts as well. So that's our target weld tool, which has combined the merge vertice tool and the merge edge tool. So it's kind of an uber merge component tool, a great way to merge and weld components there as well. Let's get rid of this guy. Whoops, not that guy. This guy specifically. So now on here I have all of these faces. Well, this is really nice. I can continue on to work with this. I might want to actually just grab, let's go with this edge extend here. And if I grab the loop, I can hold down tab and extend that out a bit. Let's grab that and extend it out. At any time I can start to manipulate these here. So I can manipulate them, again, all components within the modeling toolkit, right? I can grab the vertices, I can grab the edges, or I can grab an entire face and manipulate that. Now I said rough it in, put in the simple basics in there, because you can always grab, just like in the multi-cut tool, your control hotkey and begin to drop down edges in here, right? So if I need to make this a little more dense, I can simply do that by grabbing all of it. Now let's grab this. I'm going to turn off Make Live, because what I want to do is work with this guy. I'm going to grab this piece of geometry that I've created, and what I'm going to do is let's extrude some of those faces. So I might want to grab the extrusion tool in here, and let's grab all of these guys, grab all of my faces, and just begin to reset that, and then extrude. We can bring them out so that we're modeling in context to that piece of geometry. So I'm getting this nice kind of thickened area on there. Let's move forward though. We don't have a lot of time here, so let's move forward to continue on to a couple of the other things we want to look at. Let's just reveal actually the final gun, because we're going to take quad draw a little bit further here. This was our piece that we just built. So this is simply using all of those tools in the Modeling Toolkit. Bevels, extrusions, bridges, connections, target welds, quad draw, multi-cut tool repeatedly in here. And just simply using, I'm using 3 different cubes. I'm using a couple different shapes to Boolean in some of these shapes. I'm using a beveled square to get these kind of nice shapes in here. And then I'm beveling these cylinders, beveling and extruding cylinders to get these little plasma cylinders that I've built in here. And the handle is simply Boolean cylinders that I've transformed around after Booleaning them in there to give them that overall look. So now, let's take a look at the way we can also use the quad draw tool in another sense. So we took a look at the quad draw tool as it stands for working with existing geometry. Let's take a look at that quad draw tool and working in a different way. So here we have a rather dense piece of geometry. This is reality capture. This is a series of photographs generating a fully textured 3D mesh. And what I can do with this is begin to work with this in Maya. Well, this is a piece of a major piece of geometry that was 10 times the size. It was 50 million plus polys here. So if I put on my wireframe, you'll see how dense that geometry is. Well, the nice thing about this, I have this in a layer, but if I'm working with a huge thing, I wouldn't want that in my scene. I would bring in this piece of geometry and be able to tumble around and fly around and work with this geometry, because this is cached out geometry. And the way I did that was I took the original recap data, and then what I did was I went into my pipeline cache tools, GPU cache, exported the selection as an Alembic GPU cache. And the nice thing about the Alembic GPU cache is that if I read that into my scene, I'm able to tumble around and work with this really fast and easy, because I'm offloading this to my GPU, my graphics card. So now I can work with this piece of geometry really quickly by making this surface live, going into my Modeling Toolkit, and using quad draw. But I want to use quad draw in a different way here. So we saw how we can drop dots, or do dot drawing, as I like to call it. But if we hold down the tab key and then the middle mouse button, I can select the size of a polygon or a quad that I want to work with. So in here, let's start to drop down some of these guys. And then if I just hold and drag down, I'm actually effectively drawing in as I go. Now the nice thing about this, we showed the extend edge tool. That's how I want to work here with most of this. I'm going to use the extend edge loop, and now I'm shrink wrapping this effectively. Look how quickly I'm creating a manual retopology here. And again, remember I said this is going to shrink wrap, and I can grab these different components and bring them in. There we go. And if I grab this loop here as well, bring it up, and then grab this loop and bring it across. And now again, starting out low. Always start out low, because then it's very easy to add the dense details in later. But I didn't want to actually extend that one. We can start to bring these guys into this old wall I can fit in. And then if I grab that loop again and just bring it up. Either way, the point is that I can just simply, I've drawn down a strip of polys, and now I'm just carrying forward with the extend edge loop, and I'm able to go right across this whole structure here. That's a little too far. There we go. But now I have the basics of it. If I want the details, I just start going in and adding in edge loops. And I can start to add in maybe a few of these edge loops in here. And the nice thing about working with this, I don't need to worry about the placement of any of this in here, because at any time I can use things like the soft select tool. You see how that is actually highlighting there. So if I grab all of these, it's going to grab that whole area for me. But another really nice way to work with this here is to be able to use the relax tool in here as well. So if I turn off my soft select, I can grab any of these vertices in here as I work, but I can also grab the relax tool. So if I turn on, relax works really well by holding down shift and then using the soft select there with the B hotkey for soft select. And I can turn that off at any time and hold down my relax. And relax is going to really stick it to the shrink wrap. It's going to find a way to bring that in. Relax works best when you get it nice and dense though, of course. Now I could continue on with this much further. You can see how quick it is to create a manual retopology. That's the important workflow here. GPU cache of a dense mesh, bring it into Maya, work with it quickly by offloading it to your GPU, and simply go in and draw down some polystrips and extend edge loops to be able to recreate this surface. Let's go forward, and I'm going to, I'll turn off that wall. We'll hide that guy away. And then I actually have one that was a little more complete that I started to work with here, so I could begin to work on these details as well. That's where I could start to cut in with the multi-cut tool and begin to bring up those details as well, shrink wrapping it to that wall. So now we've taken a look at the modeling toolkit. We've taken a look at quad draw in a couple different ways by dropping down dots or dot drawing and looking at how we can use the extend loop with the polystrip tool. The last thing I want to take a look at really quickly here, let's go back to this scene. We talked about color management. In the Maya 2015 Extension 1 release, you'll see up above these color management tools. This is where I can begin to dial in things like exposure and gamma as well, so that I can get an overall, kind of nicer look. If I go into my render settings, we can turn on things, as you know, screen space, ambient occlusion, I can dial that in. I can turn up my anti-aliasing here. So maybe turn that up a little bit on this. But what I can do with this, you see I have shadows in the viewport. This is where I can start to really kind of dial in the overall look. And this is good for a couple of things. If I'm using a linear workflow for rendering, this is where I can match this working space within my viewport. So that's excellent for your rendering workflow, but also for a model visualization thing. So if you really spend the time to dial this in, you could really start to get some nice viewport effects to really showcase a model really well with things like ambient occlusion, full shadowing, adjusting your exposure and gamma on the fly so that you're getting something that's closer or in context to your final render. I'm going to leave it at here because we're running out of time, but that is my overview of the modeling tools available within Maya 2015, or at least the quick amount of time, the short amount of time I had to spend on that. We could go on forever with this, showing different workflows, and some of the enhancements available within the Extension 1 release of Maya 2015. Here's my contact information. You can follow me on Twitter at The Mudroom. I also have the blog, which is the Mudroom blog. You can follow me on YouTube with the Autodesk Mudbox YouTube account. I have a channel there where I cover things like modeling, sculpting, texturing, creature workflows, different things like that. There's my email as well. Thanks for attending. I appreciate you watching.